Come to our workshop today. So my name's Becky Dawson. I am the Secondary Specialist Resilience Training Lead for HeadStart Newham, and I will let my colleague introduce himself.
Hi, so my name's Jelani Culture. I'm one of the HeadStart Newham youth practitioners. So I kind of deliver sessions in school and with young people.
Fabulous. And we are going to spend the next sort of 30 minutes looking at a couple of things that we've been doing in Newham and feel that we have been successful in. Hopefully you will agree when we've talked through them, that are really focusing on that response to emotional wellbeing and mental health. I'm going to spend the first part of the session looking at the whole school approach, and then the lovely Jelani and I will talk you through bounce back and how we've worked. And the great thing is about this, you get a takeaway. So you're going to be able to access Bounce Back online after this session. Don't you just love a freebie? So yes, that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to start us off with a little activity because I know we've all been talking and listening, and I am a teacher at heart. So everything that we do is focused on the resilience framework. If you haven't heard of it, it was developed by Angie Hart and Derek Blinkow. And it is a brilliant framework as a starting point for any work with young people. And it allows us to explore, a little bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but in much more detail. What do our young people need, particularly those that are facing vulnerabilities, in order to reach their potential, in order to feel emotionally and mentally well in their everyday lives? What can we provide them? I wanted to just put the spotlight on you for a minute, really, and have a look at the resilience framework and have a think about, pick out one in there that you are really good at, that you are acing at the moment, and this would change from day to day. And then maybe have a look and think, oh, actually, that area is somewhere where I know I need to work on. So, for example, for me, I'm really good at tapping into good influences. So I'm good at linking in with people I know will give me a kick up the bum or whatever I need at that point. Particularly around my exercise, I've got people that keep me accountable. But I also know that when I've got a lot of work on, I struggle to ask for help and lean on others when necessary. So those are a couple of areas. So if you have a look through, please feel free, put on the chat, call out whichever one you feel you want to do. Which of these areas do you really relate to in terms of feeling like, yep, I am bossing that, or actually that's an area I know in order to improve my resilience I could probably do with working on. And if you're just happy to put that in the chat, or you may just want to have a little look at it and familiarize yourself with it. Boing is the website to look at. You can see the website at the top. There are tons of resources on there around resilience and working with young people. So I would highly recommend, if you're working with young people, that you do go there and have a look at it and take some time to think about those aspects of the resilience framework that you link in with. And can't ever forget the noble truths, really important at the bottom, accepting, conserving, commitment and listening. So accepting those young people where they are, conserving and looking at their strengths and coming at it from a strengths-based process, committing to them and following through when we say we will, and enlisting, thinking about what other things and other people may be able to offer in support of that young person. But I'm going to talk about the whole school approach, and that is absolutely still based on the resilience framework. And this is one of the first things we ask our schools to engage with, the resilience framework. And some of them have had it printed in their planners, some of them have their tutor times based on this. So it really does, in the schools that have really taken on the whole school approach, underpin everything that they do. So this is our whole school approach. And I want to say that this is only part of what we do at HeadStart, and it links in with all the other aspects. So I'll just give you a quick overview of the other things that we do that are so important to this whole school approach working. So we have our group interventions, although we have moved away from those in recent times through COVID. Sort of getting together with groups of young people has been more challenging, but we have group interventions in the school, so working specifically with groups of young people on building their resilience. We also have parents working together, parent facilitators, so supporting parents through a program of building their own resilience and also recognizing how to build the resilience of their young people. And we also have our co-production. Lorraine, thank you for that. I see that you're bossing, remembering today is another day, tomorrow's another day. That's such an important one. And then finally, our co-production work, which is has been mentioned several times and is really key to what we do. We had a group called Champions in each of our schools, which are a key part of our whole school work. They would complete an audit of the school and how the school was supporting their emotional well-being. We would use that audit to feed into any action plans. So it wasn't just coming from a staff point of view. And so this very simple table sort of highlights how we mean to influence the whole school approach and how that can be maximised. So really, and this is the toughie, it needs to become part of the whole school ethos and environment. It can't be that little bit on the side. It can't be the one training day a year where someone has a slot for an hour to talk about mental health and well-being. It needs to be part of the ethos and environment. In some schools we went into, that was already there, very much so. And in some schools, there's been a real battle over the last 5 years to get that onto the agendas and have it central to what we were doing. Leadership and management is where we start. So working with the senior leadership team, because without the senior leadership team on board, we know that it's a really challenging thing to have a whole school approach to anything. And so, you know, I've worked with, oh, my slides have gone funny now. I've worked with lots of different head teachers, some who are 100% on board, and you can see the difference with the school. It then goes flying through the whole school approach, really takes it on board. And some who are reluctant. I don't think any head teacher would say they're reluctant to work on mental health and well-being, but some feel overwhelmed by the things that they are having to do in terms of academic achievement. I was a teacher and assistant head for 16 years, so I 100% recognise that for school leaders there are so many different pressures, and we'll talk a little bit about the challenges later on. So that leadership and management allows us to come in and do training with the whole school. And one of the most important parts of that whole school training was that didn't just mean teachers, that meant support staff, that meant kitchen staff, that meant office staff, that meant the caretakers, anyone who was coming across and working with young people on a day-to-day basis. The more powerful approach was having them all involved from the beginning in that training on resilience, based on the resilience framework. And then we would complete an audit with the school, with the staff, and they would highlight their strengths and they would highlight their areas of where they needed to improve. And on the basis of that, we then can go through the bottom line and try and influence some of those key areas. So we talk about amber pupils, and those are the pupils who are maybe demonstrating emerging signs of mental health concerns, emerging signs of vulnerability. And we were working with form tutors, working with year heads to identify who those young people were and how they could support them, target them without targeting them, make sure that they are highlighted in the same way that our looked after children are highlighted, in the same way our children with special educational needs are highlighted. How can these vulnerable children be highlighted? We know who those young people are who are more at risk of having mental health and well-being concerns. Trying to influence the curriculum, looking at how, you know, very often when I was a teacher, I would hear, oh, mental health is a pastoral issue. Well, actually, no, it's an everyone issue. Everyone in the classroom can have that influence. Looking at how we can do specific staff development. So we've created lots of different training bespoke to schools, dependent on their need, dependent on the vulnerabilities present in their school, depending on the staff's experience, and really identifying those young people, monitoring what we're doing with them and evaluating the impact. I know I'm rattling through this. I'm just aware of time, but any questions, please do put them in the chat or we can answer at the end. So one of the key things that we did was to go through an audit on an annual basis with the schools. And a really important part of that process was to identify with the schools, who do they have already in their early mental health support teams. And we very much linked this in with the 2017 Green Paper on early mental health support. And we recognise actually schools themselves have early mental health support teams within them, groups of people that may be outside agencies. So we've got on here CAMS, we've got us as HeadStart. we had a lot of activities through the CASA, but there's also the form tutors, the school counsellor, the chaplain in this particular school, the safeguarding leads, who are their support team there, who should be looking at and identifying those young people that need support, looking at the opportunities they have to offer support, bringing in external factors. We went through a very simple red, amber, green process with them of where they felt they needed to improve. And so for this school in particular, whilst there were as a big group of staff who were fully on board, it was felt that the governing body and maybe needed a more of an understanding of what we were doing. And we took part in the annual Wellbeing measurement framework, which included all of the HeadStart areas, all 6 areas that you've heard spoken about today, and gave us some really clear information for each school on where their strengths were and where they maybe needed to think about how they're supporting their young people with their mental health and needs, and so a couple of areas. So once those areas were identified, we had a really good basis on which to plan with that school. What are the next steps? What do we need to focus on? How are we going to improve parental engagement? What can we do? And as a team at HeadStart, we would bring in different members of our team. So our parent facilitators, for example, would do training, or we would work with a particular group of young people to create a project on a particular area. And as the lead, as a resilience training lead, I would work with that school over the year, meet with them regularly, give them a space to think about what they've been doing, to reflect. And as an ex sort of designated safeguarding lead in Senko, that sort of time to actually sit down and talk with someone outside of the school and reflect on what's been happening and what's been doing is really, really precious. And that's what a lot of our schools have come back to us and said the real power of the whole school work has been someone to bounce ideas off, someone to give another view, someone to be objective, and that's been a great principle of what we've done. So one of our schools, this is one of our case studies, we went through the previous process that you've seen. These are the things that they highlighted in terms of things that they feel have been a plus from their work on the whole school approach with HeadStart. So they have a comprehensive map of school provision. Now, that seems like an obvious thing. We have our provision maps for special educational needs, but this school now has a map that crosses everything. It's so comprehensive, really allowed them to pinpoint exactly what they have on offer and what works for each young person, rather than it being a bit of a lottery of who works with them and who sees them. Mental health is now specifically named in the school improvement plan, and obviously that will become even more important as Ofsted have that focus. But they have, it's a really key tenet of what they're doing. They felt really well supported in terms of the training program. So we were able to go in and offer whole school training on a range of different topics around trauma. In particular, I went in last week and did some work around social, emotional, mental health, specifically around how to support young people in the classroom. And it allowed them to really raise their standards of wellbeing provision, and really think about what is it that we want to offer our young people, and what is it that we want to be able to say we have got on the plate ready for them. And they really are an outstanding school, and that's not just because of HeadStart in any way, shape or form, but we have been able to feed into that and give them that space to consider it. They have now got tutor time program, which is fully embedded and crosses a whole gamut of work around mental health, wellbeing and resilience, which we worked with the school to produce. And so the whole school approach has been a really key part of what we do in Newham, both with secondaries and primary schools. We've worked with around 40 primary schools and 14 secondary schools over the past 5 years to really, oh, my slides have gone, to really focus that work and allow schools the space to develop. And it's been different in every school. It's been absolutely different in every school, which I think is a really key part of it. It's not a one size fits all. And finally, I talked a little bit about the wellbeing measurement framework, some data on that. So for our primary schools, the trend across the 5 years has highlighted 2 areas of improvement for those HeadStart primary schools. That's decreased emotional and behavioural difficulties. and in the secondary schools, decreased behavioural difficulties and increase in peer support. And interestingly, we run a mentoring programme in our secondary schools. Now, I'm not going to claim that HeadStart has had that impact. There will be lots of things that have had that impact and made that difference. But certainly schools have highlighted that working on a whole school approach has improved that awareness of mental health, that young people now are being given a voice. So vulnerable young people who may not have previously been involved in school advocacy work or, school leadership, our champions groups were made up of young people who came from those vulnerable groups. And now, for the case study school that I highlighted, they are part of the school leadership group. So whereas previously it might have been the more confident young people that wanted to be representatives for their form group, their year group, now staff are proactively engaging young people who may be vulnerable, may be struggling to have their voice and have their say as well. And staff have benefited from a range of different trainings, increasing their knowledge and really being able to identify those young people with emerging mental health needs rather than dealing with the outcome, rather than dealing with the things that are happening at the end. And so there's a huge amount that we've learned about whole school work, but I'm going to kind of hand it over to you a little bit. Hopefully, it is always a little bit unnerving doing this, but everyone's got their cameras off, which I understand why, but I do wonder then if everyone's just gone off to have a nap or to make a cup of tea. And I'm sure you are all there. I've put a Jamboard into the chat and hopefully you can access that. What I would be keen, thank you. Thanks, you're there. What I would be keen for you to do on the Jamboard, please. We've got this mountain here, which I do feel a little bit like we've gone through with HeadStart, kind of climbing that mountain to get to the top and really thinking about that whole school support. I want you to think about the challenges that embedding a whole school approach has and what do we need. And I kind of think I've touched on some of them, but if you can on the Jamboard put the needs at the bottom in the grassy areas and the challenges across the mountain, it'll allow us just to have a 5-minute discussion on what we need to have in place for a whole school approach really to work, because for those of us in education, we get bombarded with whole school approaches all the time, don't we? And this is going to be the next new thing. How do we make sure that that works? So I'm just going to stop sharing here now and hopefully share the Jamboard and see different people's responses. So I'm just going to get that up. So you should be able to access it. If you haven't used Jamboard before, where have you been? They're my favorite thing in the world. You get a little sticky note on the left hand side here. If you just click on there, it'll give you the option, and I'm going to start off with a need of SLT Buyin, and I'm just going to put that down there. So if you can think of any needs that are present, what do we need for a whole school approach to work, then please do put it at the top. Any challenges? Absolutely. Any challenges can go on the mountain. I guess if we really want to take the metaphor further, the harder the challenge, the higher it can go on the mountain. Yes, similar whole staff buy-in. Absolutely. Yes, because in terms of whole staff buy-in, when our young people are experiencing something in one classroom, which is taking into account their mental health needs and their resilience, and then walks into another classroom and has a very different experience, that can be so challenging for a young person. We need to know that they are going to have the opportunity to experience that in every interaction. It's Dr. Karen Treisman that says every interaction is an intervention. Every time we talk to those young people, it can make a huge difference. So definitely space for strategic thinking and implementation. Yes, behaviour policies. I quite like the new take on them, relationship policies. So I'm advocating that we don't call them behaviour policies anymore. We call them relationship policies, because essentially that's what it's about. And that also puts an onus on staff as well as young people in terms of their relationships and how they build them, because we know it's not a one-way street. It's not just about young people. Brilliant. It's not just about young people behaving in a particular way. It is also about staff building relationships in a particular way. Absolutely, co-creation of sessions with young people. and getting them to understand and feeling involved. And we know we have a wonderful youth panel that we work with, and we know that there is nothing more powerful than them coming and speaking. And if we'd have been out of school hours, we would no doubt have had one of them here, but you'll have to put up with Jelani. I mean, he didn't leave school that long ago, but probably a bit quite long ago. I might be doing a bit of a favour there, Jelani. Parents and carers, 100%. That's why our parent work is so important. And when schools really buy into linking in with parents as well, it's so much more powerful, because we need parents and carers to be feeding into that experience. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes and then we'll go over to Jelani. Yes, linking in with local community and what is available is a huge positive in a whole school approach, because it doesn't have to just be on the school shoulders. Yeah, policies and set review dates, so it doesn't just become a paper exercise, those policies that are written and then are never seen again or heard of. Ongoing training, it's not just a one moment thing. It's got to be about staff feeling competent and confident throughout, and absolutely adjustments that can benefit not one but all pupils. And I feel, and that's the biggest has been the biggest learning for me in terms of a whole school approach. A whole school approach does benefit everyone, because just because your young person isn't having a mental health concern at that point doesn't mean that they won't, doesn't mean that they're not dealing with a friend having that, doesn't mean that that's not something they would experience. If we all become more literate around mental health and well-being, then absolutely it'll have an impact. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Oh God, that's me first, isn't it? So Bounce Back is our one of our resilience targeted interventions, and it worked with a range of different young people. There is much more detail in the report on our website that you can find. The findings from our report were that taking part in Bounce Back significantly predicted a reduction in emotional difficulty, so 8%, minus 8%. And obviously, those young people who attended more sessions had more significance for. And the key for that was robust and rigorous analysis, so that we could be confident in those results. The lovely Jelani is going to talk you through a little bit of what that work involved.
There it is. Yeah, so as Becky said, I'm Jelani. I'm one of the HeadStart Newham youth practitioners. So I'd have been the person responsible for delivering a series of bounce back sessions to a group of 15 young people. So on the screen now, you've got like what is a visual representation of kind of how that works. So starting from the left, you've kind of got the beginning of the intervention, so the people involved. Moving to the green section where you've got kind of the output, so what happens during the sessions and during the program. And then kind of after the program's finished, kind of how we deal with that process as well. So I guess where it would start would be member of the team, prac team like myself, meeting with school staff, discussing the group of young people they might want to refer for the group. So they could have a series of different issues they might want to deal with, or some schools focus on a group of young people all dealing with a similar issue. So it might be a lack of confidence, or they might have a few kind of behavioural issues. So they might have a group of young people all with that similar issue who they refer to us, and then we kind of tailor our sessions accordingly. So how it works is they then refer their group of 15 young people. I would then go in, do a one-to-one with each young person, kind of meet them, discuss what the bounce back program is, how it's kind of built to help their resilience, and try and get a little bit of buy-in from them, because obviously we don't want them to kind of, I guess, just be there because they're forced to be there. We want them to kind of be involved in that process of understanding why they're there and how it can help them. So then after the one-to-one process, we kind of go through the pre-survey process, as Becky said, and some of the data shows. So that's how we kind of prove it's having an impact with our young people. So they do a pre-survey and a post-survey at the end of their 10 sessions, and we kind of see what progress they've made. So the 10 sessions cover a range of different subjects. I actually do have a prop. So this is, hold on, I don't know if you can see that, bounce back journal. So that's what the young people get and they use in each session. Hold on, I can give you some of the names of the sessions. They're from finding someone to trust and talk to, eating healthy, being more active, and I guess they're all sessions based on helping you kind of build your resilience. and that's kind of where we start with the young people. And I guess the point of that is to kind of prepare them for that transition stage. So they start off in either year 5 or 6, kind of prepare them and build their resilience for when they, in that transition period, moving into secondary school, which we know is quite a challenge for a lot of the young people. Hold on. So I'm trying
Sorry,
to think.
the slides have gone all funny. Let me just
Right.
get you back to where we were.
So I guess the key to a lot of the success of the program, I guess, is, as Becky was saying, as our resilience training lead, is the whole school approach. So I guess my probably better experiences delivering a bounce back program are in schools where the whole school is kind of involved in the process. So classroom teachers, heads of year, support staff were all kind of involved in the process of kind of supporting the young people involved in the bounce back group. So they would have a regular member of school staff check in with them in between sessions to see how they're doing. We got parents involved a lot of the time, so they're as part of the sessions, we might give them a task or something to think about in between sessions. So they might go home and find that trusted person that they want to talk to and get help from. A lot of the time it is parents or siblings or people at home. And then also, I guess having the whole school approach helps with the other young people. So not just the young people taking part in Bounce Back, but the other young people being aware of kind of what that building resilience can do for you. So a lot of the time we get young people that might even ask me after sessions, and they've kind of seen me around, kind of what Bounce Back is and how it might help them. So I guess that helps build the whole school approach as well. Anything else on in-school delivery that I've missed, Becky?
No, not at all. No. I think one of the things we talked about in the whole, I think we talked about staff in school being involved and knowing and being able to share the common language with it, which we've kind of highlighted here in terms of the sorts of language we used. It's very much a strengths-based approach. So it's very much, we did have a lot of, as you do tend to get with interventions, as soon as you say you've got an intervention, you get sent all of the naughty boys. And we did get quite a lot of that at the start. And it was about reframing it for them. And it wasn't that they were naughty boys. It was that they were facing a challenge. What was that challenge? How could they overcome it? What skills did they already have? And that worked really, really well. And then increasingly, as we worked with the schools, they came to recognise that actually the importance of this is about not just behavior issues, but maybe around being isolated or struggling with friendships. And so we've got a wider range of young people engaged in the process. I'm not sure we're going to have a chance for the activity on this one because I think I talked for too long, Jelani, but it's going to,
Right.
Sorry. No, my talk for too long. How long have we got, Donna?
Well, actually it's 2 minutes, and there's also a question in the chat
I'm
as
just
well.
answering it. I'm in the middle of answering that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So just to kind of say where we are now, kind of led on by COVID, we weren't able to go into schools and practitioners weren't able to see young people as easily as they had been before. We've now got a slightly different model in that we're looking at workforce development through Bounce Back. So working with the school or school staff to be able to run Bounce Back online themselves, essentially, and think about how they can use that. And we've got a range of different people. So some people might be training up their sixth formers to do it. Some are doing it with small groups as part of a teaching assistant, learning assistant intervention. Some are doing it with whole tutor groups over a time. And the great thing is that this is a resource that's available to all of you too. So this is Bounce Back Online. It's free. It's there for you to access as you would. You can use it, as I said, on a one-to-one, on a group basis. And absolutely, if you want any more input, support or information on that, then HeadStart Newham will be more than happy to help you with that. We're not just kind of holding it in Newham and keeping it there. So let us know. And Peter, I am just answering your question in the chat. I'm just going to, so Peter has asked about challenges with schools not being in the right place, and absolutely we had lots of schools. We had a school at the very beginning that said, sorry, we can't focus on mental health and wellbeing because we're an academic school. They didn't see that they had a problem with mental health and wellbeing, and then some schools we just didn't carry on with because there's no point kind of knocking on a locked door. But for many it was about just being tenacious and kept going back, kept having the right conversations, help in ways we could help before they were ready and open for us to do the whole school training. and how academies and trusts in your area have approached whole school or college approach, whether they've chosen to develop at the school or whole organisation. So we do have a trust in Newham who's taken on the whole school approach across the trust really successfully. In fact, we have 2 trusts that have done that, and each school may have done it slightly differently, but the kind of the thread has gone through the whole academy. We've only just started working with colleges, so that's new for us. But I'm just going to put my email address in the chat, and you can email me at any point. We're in a really exciting time now. We're becoming in our last year, but also a time when we want to be able to share what we've learned with as many people as possible. So just drop me an email. I'm leaving next week. I just remembered that. Drop me an email in the next 2 weeks, or you can email my boss, and I'm just going to drop her email in there. .gov.uk. And any more information we'll be more than happy to share. Go through Bounce Back Online. I'm sure the lovely Jelani will talk you through that as well. Please do get in touch. Hopefully that was useful.